In Meteor Kick's cooperative spotlight, we have again Wallington Tutors. If you need a tutor, please visit wallington-tutors.com. That's WALLINGTON tutors, TUTORS.com. This is the audio version of Ralph Nader Presents Civics for Democracy, A Journey for Teachers and Students by Catherine Isaac. Narrated by Rio. My Twitter handle is at Rio of the Win with a capital R, a capital O, a capital T, and a capital W. Forward. A certain level of extraction, there is widespread agreement in our country that good citizenship builds a better democracy, which in turn contributes to a stable society of opportunity and justice. However, as one moves closer to the fields of life's practice, the grand consensus increasingly crumbles, revealing two camps: the many, who believe that people should have adequate rights and remedies even though they do not possess the wealth or power, and the few, who are not troubled by today's inequities. The assumption underlying Civics for Democracy, a journey for teachers and students, draws on the old adage that when a society is in trouble, the solution is not less democracy, but more democracy. Is our society in trouble? Most people would reply in the affirmative and proceed to give very similar examples of what they mean by trouble. According to the recent Kettering report, Citizens in Politics, a view from Main Street America, public participation in voting is low and seems to be reaching lower levels at each election. People's frustration about politics is high. A sense of political efficiency among citizens is missing. One logical response to this characterization of the popular mood is to look at our schools, where the next generation of citizens is spending a considerable portion of its waking days. Corporate involvement in the public schools has raised concerns among educators about excessive commercialism, symbolized by the controversy over the Whittle Communications Channel 1. At the same time, the programs of teacher conventions, especially social studies teachers, are filled with seminars and workshops about the need for greater civic competence, civic literacy, and citizenship skills. It seems that teachers are competing these days, not successfully, with the time youngsters spend watching television, videos, and other big-time corporate entertainment shaped for their various age groups. Learning good citizenship needs to become a high priority in our schools because it combines a requirement of proficiency in basic education with experience. It connects knowledge to its application, fueled by the student motivation that proceeds from being taken seriously and given responsibilities in association with adults from the community. Unfortunately, good citizenship is not accorded a serious status within the curriculum of most schools. As Ernest L. Boyer, president of the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching, observed, moral and civic education have almost disappeared. We've become increasingly preoccupied with the economic impact of education. Practicing civics, becoming a skilled citizen, using one's skills to overcome apathy, ignorance, greed, or the abuses of power in society at all levels invites knowledge of civic history, understanding of civic rights and strategies, and shaping in a growing civic culture of regular participation. Bridging the gap between classroom learning and community experience is a way of connecting students to purposeful learning that transcends the listlessness and restlessness on one hand and the excessive vocational or trade school instrumentationalism on the other hand. Throughout this book, written by Catherine Isaac, in consultation with a deep reserve of classroom teachers, general educators, and experienced citizens, is a steady, though little recognized theme of American history. That is, beyond its battles, its elections, its enterprise, and its calamities, there runs a steady, steadfast, and sturdy civic energy, ranging from minorities of one to mass movements of Americans that have rescued their country from shame, error, cruelty, and decline. But the latter forces keep reemerging and place ever more complex and time-absorbing demands on citizens to build and rebuild movements of reconstruction and redress. Demands on our practice of citizenship grow with the expansion of a complex, interdependent society. Our supply of citizenship must keep up, equipped with modern democratic tools suited more to the 21st century than the 18th. This logically brings us back to our schools, where civic education has lacked educational fortitude. Civics as a course of instruction seems to invite more than its share of collective yawns inside and outside the classroom. This is so because instructional materials have been shorn of the grist of civic history, which is controversial, struggles over injustice between parties and interests, having proper names, brand names, and heroic names. The neutralizing of the civics curriculum through a sophoric excess of self-censorship joins with the potency of civic experience afforded students. Where different conditions have prevailed, where teachers and principals and school boards have shed their inhibition to confront realities past and present, students are given problems to analyze and solutions to ponder and advance in their own neighborhood, community, state, nation, or right inside their own school. The fresh initiatives of free, critical, intellectual, and normative school and community experiences tap into the multiple intelligences of students and provoke them to levels of confidence, attentiveness, and participation neither they nor their teachers thought possible. The emphasis on this book is meant to stimulate these very characteristics. Without this modest level of fortitude regarding the substance of civics for democracy, education at all levels will continue to strip mine this part of the curriculum of its metabolism, its motivating force to take the students from instruction to learning to knowledge to application until the acme of pedagogical ambition is reached, the sustained onset of educational self-renewal of, by, and for the student. Fortitude, history, skills, and experience are threads that are woven throughout civics for democracy, so that many journeys are undertaken by teachers with their students, journeys that students desire to continue long after graduation. For civic participation is a formula for human happiness, both private and public. It is more than a slogan to be intoned or even a duty to be self-imposed. It is delight to be savored as an essential quality of life that makes democracy an authentic reality. Indeed, there can be no daily democracy without daily citizenship. But rights are not enough. There must be added skills and experience so that these rights are exercised by an educated mind. For it is superior to foresee and forestall than to react and repair. Everyone at some time comes to some definition of democracy. Permit me to offer one. A democracy is a society where less and less courage and risk are needed of more and more people to spread justice and the blessings of liberty throughout the land. Such a society starts with dedicated attentions to the nurturing of civic cultures. Civics can be a grand and regular nurturer. The Center for Study for Responsive Law nurtured this volume and this orientation as its response to nearly a generation of requests by teachers and others that we make a contribution arising from our experience of working with students on many projects to the forward march of civic educational quality and retention. May the following pages find their uses in the minds and hearts of young citizens eager to build a more just, sustainable, and happy world. Ralph Nader, Washington, D.C., August 1992. Preface. Numerous reports have documented a citizenship crisis, a lack of knowledge of the basic concept of citizenship, and a disconnectedness and alienation of young people in the United States from engaging our system of government. For example, a 1989 survey commissioned by People for American Way concluded young Americans today have absorbed only half of democracy's story, perceiving the virtue of our system of government only in the rights and freedom it provides, not in the accompanying responsibilities it bestows. When asked to describe a good citizen, students responded that the task of being a good citizen carries no additional meaning or special responsibilities beyond simply being a good person. The basic civic duty to vote was mentioned only 12% of the respondents as a component of citizenship. However, the People of the American Way survey concluded that members of today's younger generation are not, by and large, selfish or apathetic. They seem to be well-meaning people with weak civic skills. Although most students were not involved in any kind of community service or political action, they indicated a willingness to become involved. Of the students surveyed, 51% favored making community service a requirement for high school graduation, and 89% agreed that volunteer service work should be rewarded with school credit. If apathy or selfishness are not major factors, then what prevents people from participating in affairs of their communities? Community organizer Sai Khan writes that one of the biggest barriers to participation is fear. People often fear that they are not competent enough to give a speech in public, or fear that they will appear ignorant when asking a question or voicing an opinion. People also fear what will happen, losing their job or being harassed or intimidated, for example, if they do speak out about problems in the workplace or community. While some of these fears may be justified, sometimes this fear is exaggerated, writes Khan, because we are not taught that citizen participation is basic to how the American system of democracy and representative government is supposed to work. We do not learn that almost all significant social change in this country was brought about by citizen action. From Rosa Parks refusing to tolerate segregation on the Montgomery, Alabama buses to, more recently, Lewis Gibbs demanding that she and her neighbors at Love Canal in New York be protected from toxic waste contamination. Because our schools teach so little about how citizens have participated throughout U.S. history, it is difficult for many citizens to imagine themselves becoming involved. As historian Lawrence Goodwin writes, one cannot construct what one cannot imagine. Citizens must be aware not only that problems exist, as students living with problems including poverty and violent crime already do, abilities to diminish these problems exist as well. Citizens must be able to imagine what can happen when people try to make change. Even if citizens overcome their fears and envision a better world, they still need concrete civic skills to be effective in their efforts. Because many people do not know how to proceed from where we are to where we wish to be, they focus on private individual gain to the exclusion of public civic life. By encouraging students to participate in their schools and communities, this book is intended to help students learn firsthand that citizenship involves more than freedoms and liberties. By learning that citizen action has a long tradition in the United States, students overcome their fears and imagine a world made better by their involvement in it. By practicing citizen tools and skills in the laboratory of community, students gain the confidence and experience to continue their involvement throughout their lives. The first section profiles the students in action, dispels the idea that young people are not involved by telling 7 stories of students who have worked to make positive change. From the high school students in Coral Springs, Florida, who successfully campaigned to save the largest stand of cypress trees in their county, to the elementary school students in Washington, D.C., whose energy patrol saved their school thousands of dollars in energy bills. These examples are meant to inspire students all over the United States that their actions can and do make a difference. The second section, History of Citizen Movements, offers a history of 5 citizen movements: civil rights, labor, women's rights, consumer, and environmental, to show students how people have effected change over the course of U.S. history. Although each of these topics may be mentioned in high school history texts, the following chapters are an attempt to bring teachers and students more detailed material that illuminates the role of the citizen, rather than government or other institutions, in effecting change. The lives of a number of individual activists are profiled to reveal how and why people overcome their fears to become involved in the issues and problems of their communities. The third section, Techniques for Participation, describes some of the many strategies that citizens throughout the U.S. history have used and continue to use to effect change. These citizen tools include direct actions such as boycotts and demonstrations, the steps involved in citizen lobbying to change or create laws, how citizens can use the courts, how to propose a ballot initiative, and how to get a message to the media. Section 4, Student Activities, offers 10 projects that students can undertake within the school or in the community. Some active civics courses call for students to visit City Hall or invite government officials over to speak at the school, but activities in this book offer students a more indelible opportunity to practice solving problems themselves in the laboratory of their own community or school. Students profile their elected officials by looking at voting records, campaign finances, and press coverage, and release their results to voters in their communities. Students learn about energy efficiency, conduct a waste hunt in their school to identify wasteful energy practices, and recommend and implement changes. And students survey area stores for toys that do not meet federal or state safety standards, issue their findings to parents, and teach younger children about toy safety. And with the Time Dollar, a system of trading time for services deployed by Dr. Edgar Khan, teachers and students have an excellent opportunity to build a base for community service within the school. In addition, 75 student activity ideas are offered to inspire students to look at their own school and communities to decide what issues they want to resolve. An extensive list of resources, citizens groups, publications, teaching materials, and videos will help students and teachers in their search for information about issues in which they choose to become involved. Preface: Suggestions for using Civics for Democracy as a 1-year or 1-semester course on participatory civics. Combine all sections of the book to shape a vibrant civics course in which students learn about citizen participation in U.S. history, the skills of citizen action, and the practical applications of these tools to improve their schools and communities. As a supplement to U.S. history courses, use each of the chapters from History of Citizens Movements to enhance traditional history textbook discussions. Supplement current events discussions with issues that face the movements for civil rights, women's rights, labor, environmental, and consumer protection today. Add a discussion of citizen movements which many U.S. history textbooks do not cover. As a supplement to U.S. government courses, use the background material from the following student activities: profiling members of Congress, community profile of voter participation, using the Freedom of Information Act, representativeness in the jury selection process, and evaluating local television news to discuss barriers that often diminish citizen participation, including the campaign finance system, voter registration, the lack of access to government information, restrictions on jury service, and the lack of citizen access to media. Discuss proposals for reform. As a guide for an after-school club, combine material from the history of citizens movements with a student activity. For example, provide students in an after-school environmental club with examples of how other citizens, including high school students, have won environmental victories. Follow the activities guides to conduct an energy waste hunt or make your school a green consumer. Use the techniques for participation to choose citizen tools for solving environmental problems in your community. Section 1. Profiles of Students in Action. Saving What's Left of Florida. Channel 1 Boycott. Energy patrols in Washington, D.C. Public interest research groups. Polystyrene foam ban in New Jersey. Study group report on nursing homes. Utah pupils fight toxic waste. Profiles of Students in Action. Kids Against Pollution, a nationwide group started by Closter, New Jersey students, is calling for an amendment to the U.S. Constitution to guarantee the right to clean air, water, and land. Student journalists from Hazelwood, Missouri, challenged school censorship of their student newspaper in the U.S. Supreme Court, and students in Roxana, Missouri, raised almost $6,000 to buy 10 acres of endangered rainforest in Costa Rica. Students all over the United States are working to improve their schools, community, country, and world. The following profiles of students in action serve as inspiring examples that show students can and do make a difference. Saving What's Left of Florida. It all started in 1987 with Charles Devaney, a teacher at Coral Springs High School in Florida, was biking to work and saw that land near the school was slated to be cleared for development. He spoke to his outdoor education class about the rapid rate of deforestation in southern Florida and of his desire to preserve some of the area's nature for future generations. Students wanted to know what they could do. So Devaney and his students formed a club called Save What's Left to try to build soccer fields. The students began by writing letters to anyone they could think of who might be able to stop the destruction of the trees. At first, no one in the community listened, so Save What's Left students began to gather signatures on petitions to protest the development. Standing on the sidewalk in front of their school, they held signs asking drivers passing by in their cars to stop to sign the students' petition. The response was so overwhelming that on the second day of petitioning, the Highway Patrol had to direct traffic. Save What's Left eventually gathered 3,500 signatures from community residents concerned about the rapid rate of development. Upon further investigation, the students discovered that the developers had skirted regulations concerning development of wetlands. Because more than 10 acres of wetlands were at stake, the developers needed federal permission to build. But instead of going through the Federal Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, which would have required public scrutiny of the project, the developers obtained 2 special permits, each for less than 10 acres from the Army Corps of Engineers. The Corps, which is authorized to issue permits when less than 10 acres are involved, issued 2 permits in different names to allow the developers to bypass the EPA. Because the permits had already been issued and because the conflict involved federal agencies, local officials' hands were tied. But Save What's Left never gave up. The students spoke at city and county council meetings and gathered petitions to convince the city and county commissions to ask residents to vote to buy the land. After 2 years, the issue was put on the ballot for the voters to decide. In March of 1989, Broward County voters approved a $75 million bond issue to buy the 68 acres of Coral Springs trees, as well as 13 other sites in the country. The 68 acres turned out to be the largest cypress tree stands left in Broward County. County Commissioner John Hart said, "It was because of people like these kids and Save What's Left that this got done." The city of Coral Springs and Save What's Left have begun a project to completely restore the land over the next few years. Eventually, it will be used as an outdoor classroom in which to teach environmental appreciation and to inspire other environmentalists to use their power to save what's left. The outdoor education class that Save What's Left advisor Charles Devaney teaches is so popular that some students wait 2 years to enroll. Save What's Left has grown to 300 members at Coral Springs High School and has expanded to schools in 5 other states as well as Yugoslavia and Colombia. Soon it will expand to Bolivia and Puerto Rico. And in its 4 years of existence, the club has compiled an impressive list of achievements. students collected over 25 tons of phone books for recycling. They participate in annual beach cleanups. They protested a proposed garbage incinerator, initiated a school recycling program, and launched dozens of other school and community projects. Save What's Left students also picketed to protest the building of a strip shopping center. They argue there is no need for another shopping center, especially in an environmentally sensitive area. Devaney and 10 club members were invited by Governor Lawton Chiles to attend the 1991 Earth Day celebrations at the state capitol. And the students have been featured in several local and national newspapers and magazines. Devaney was named Coral Springs High School Teacher of the Year for 1987 to 1988 and Citizen of the Year by the Coral Springs News. In October of 1990, Save What's Left members posted signs throughout Coral Springs near land being cleared for development. The students attached signs to the trees reading, "Please save these trees," and don't let them kill me." It was a silent protest, said Devaney, because the trees can't speak for themselves. The silent protest caused quite a stir in the community. The students, their advisors, and the school board received threatening letters from the Coral Bridge Properties, the developer involved, charging that the students had trespassed and then insinuating that Devaney should be fired. Several newspapers supported the students' right to protest, and attorneys in the community offered their services, if needed. Parents enthusiastically supported Devaney and convinced the school board to endorse his activities. Asked why the club members are waging their campaign, student Jennifer Swanberg answered, "I just got scared. I thought that one day I'd have kids with these 3 heads because of all the pollution. We have to do something about it." The club once again took on developers to protest proposed changes in the city's tree ordinance. The students protested the city's planning and zoning board proposal to allow developers and homeowners to replace each tree they remove, no matter how old or large, with a smaller, younger tree. Save What's Left students drafted their own ordinance for evaluation by the planning and zoning board. "There will always be another game or another party," said Save What's Left member Alex Pomarita, "but there might not be another chance to save the environment." Save What's Left is setting up a computer network that will allow access to information and suggestions for starting a branch of this environmental group. Contact Charles Devaney at Save What's Left, care of Coral Springs High School, 7201 West Sample Road, Coral Springs, Florida, 33065. Channel One Boycott. Students at North High School in Fargo, North Dakota returned to school in September 1990 to find a newly created 20-minute homeroom class. School administrators created the class by cutting the students' lunch period to require students to watch Channel One, a television news program with commercials that is beamed into classrooms across the United States via satellite. North High School agreed with Whittle Communications, the producer of Channel One, to require students to view the program every day in exchange for a TV satellite dish, 2 video cassette recorders, and 37 television sets. Students at North High quickly objected to Channel One, said student Leslie Doran. "I was looking forward to the program until I actually saw it, but the news lacked any kind of depth." Student Jared Eddy said of Channel One's news program, "You get more out of reading the newspaper headlines." Other students objected to the cut in lunchtime and to the mandatory viewing. The concerns of students at North High School were not the first. Critics around the country objected to the viewing of commercials. Advertisers pay Whittle Communications $150,000 for each 30-second commercial aired on Channel One during classroom time. Only 2 minutes of the program is national news, another 2 minutes is advertisements, and the other 10 minutes is devoted to stories on topics from new hairstyles to new cars. These stories often feature a product. One segment, for example, showed how Nike running shoes are manufactured. New York and Rhode Island banned their public schools from entering into contracts with Channel One, and California's superintendent of education has told California schools that signing up violates the state's constitution. California will withhold state funds equal to the 2 minutes students spend watching commercials each day from any school that signs up with Channel One. According to John Murray, professor at Kansas State University, an analysis of Channel One showed that it provided more in-depth coverage in the advertising than the news. A typical episode would devote only 125 seconds to 7 news stories, 18 seconds per story, as opposed to 120 seconds for 4 television commercials. Furthermore, the dialogue in both news and advertising runs at a pace of 140 words per minute, twice as fast as normal speech. In-depth commercial-free news programs available. Cable news network, CNN, Newsroom, is offered to schools without charge and has longer, more clearly focused news stories. One news story was nearly 4 minutes long as opposed to maximum of 40 seconds on Channel One. And the dialogue on CNN Newsroom was more normal in pace, about 90 words per minute. A number of public television stations around the country also produced news programs for students. Encouraged by a history teacher, the North High students planned a boycott of Channel 1. On the first day, 250 students skipped homeroom. The next day, 600 of North High's 850 students stayed away from class. North High's principal made a deal with the students. If they returned to class, they could present their views to the school board. 1 week later, at a school board meeting, the student protesters made their case against Channel 1. Student body president Erica Hovland told the board members, Channel 1 has no educational value. The school gets $50,000 in free equipment, but the students gain nothing. Jared Eide advocated alternatives to Channel 1, which did not contain commercials and emphasized more serious news. Eide also said students were willing to raise money to pay for the equipment obtained in the Channel 1 agreement. The student walkout prompted the Board of Education to set up a committee made up of students, teachers, and parents to study students' complaints about the program. The committee examined 5 episodes in depth and issued a 25-page report of their findings. The committee concluded that Channel 1 should cover fewer stories in depth on each program and that minority issues needed to be covered with more sensitivity. Channel 1 responded to the walkout and report by sending a company representative to meet with the students in March 1991. Gary Belias, a spokesperson for the Whittle Communications, told the Associated Press in October 1990 that out of 4,000 schools online, this is the only one raising a protest. The school board decided to eliminate the homeroom period, but students must view Channel 1 at the end of the day. The board formed another committee without student representatives to study the situation further. Says Erica Hovland, it's a positive change, but our main goal is still to get rid of Channel 1. The students who attracted media attention nationwide vowed to continue their protest if the board decides to keep Channel 1. Says student Leslie Doran of the boycott, when you believe in something, you take a stand. Energy patrols in Washington, D.C. Students in the District of Columbia roam the halls of their elementary schools in search of open windows, leaky faucets, and other forms of energy waste. Since 1984, energy patrols, teams of students wearing bright orange jackets and armed with clipboards, have contributed to an effort that has lowered the energy consumption and utility bills of district schools. Students patrol their schools in the morning and afternoon and during recess, making note of broken windows, open doors, and lights left on in empty classrooms. The patrols report their findings to a sponsoring teacher, who in turn reports them to the principal or school custodian. Sometimes the patrols leave notes or citations advising teachers or students of energy violations. The purpose of the program is to lower utility bills and to teach students about energy conservation. The savings reported by some of the participating schools indicate that the students have been successful in meeting the program's goals. Principal Irma Fields credits the Energy Patrol with reducing the 1990 utility bill of J.L. Wilson Elementary School by $43,000. According to Lily Lewis of the D.C. Energy Office, almost 90% of D.C. public elementary schools participate in the program, and more students are eager to join the patrols. Since the Energy Office can afford to give out only 10 jackets to each school, sponsoring teachers have implemented a policy of alternating the students on the patrol so everyone has a chance to participate. One of the most enthusiastic participants in the school is in the program is the patrol at Parkview Elementary School, which is organized by science teacher Barry Sprague. As of March 1991, about 40 students were on a waiting list to join the 12-member patrol, which helped the school to save over $1,500 in utility bills in 1990. Sprague became concerned that students were only interested in the program because they liked to wear the orange jackets. So he took the jackets away for a few weeks and was pleased to find the students still excited about energy conservation. The students liked the idea of being in charge, says Sprague, who described the program as giving students the power to accomplish something constructive through means as simple as switching off a light. Parkview School paid to have patches and baseball hats made for the patrollers to wear with their jackets. The students had a chance to show off their outfits when they appeared on a cable news network segment about the patrols. Public interest research groups. State University of New York at Buffalo student Jill Siegel, at age 19, successfully lobbied the New York State Legislature to pass a bill designed to protect consumers from fraud in sales of hearing aids, despite intense opposition from the hearing aid industry. Siegel's campaign was part of her legislative internship with the group New York Public Interest Research Group. NYPIRG. From being a nervous and uptight sophomore, I became more aggressive and poised as I went along, says Siegel. NYPIRG students at Queens College had released a study revealing that hearing aid dealers regularly convinced elderly customers to buy the devices whether or not they needed them, and that dealers failed to alert customers who needed further medical attention. Siegel and the NYPIRG staff proposed that a law be passed to require all hearing aid customers to obtain a doctor's prescription before purchase, to ensure that only those who need the device buy it. Once, when our bill got stalled, we held a press conference with the sponsors, says Siegel. We put together a good campaign, lots of letters and telegrams from hundreds of people. On such a relatively obscure issue, that much support is unexpected. It makes people pay a lot of attention. NYPIRG formed a coalition with senior citizenship groups, doctors, and audiologists, which effectively pressured the legislature to pass the bill. Siegel says, being there firsthand was what really taught me about the legislature. I always have felt that through college, most of my true learning was gleaned from working with NYPIRG. College students around the country, as part of campus-based public interest research groups, PIRGs, actively participate in shaping issues facing their community. PIRGs, which are student-run and student-funded organizations, exist on 175 campuses in 25 states and Canada. Each PIRG hires a small professional staff of lawyers, scientists, and researchers to assist students with their various campaigns and to provide community continuity to efforts sometimes interrupted by summer or semester breaks in the school year, writes Kelly Griffin in More Action for a Change. Through PIRGs, students have uncovered everything from auto repair ripoffs to deadly toxic chemicals in drinking water sources, from dangerous and banned children's toys being sold in department stores to the lack of planning for emergency evacuation of people living around nuclear power plants. PIRG students launch campaigns on issues concerning the environment, university governance, government ethics, standardized testing, voter registration, and many others. They encourage student activism by providing students with the skills and materials that they need to become involved in issues that interest them. PIRGs teach students how to run a campaign, plan a rally, recruit students to join a group, attract media attention for an event, and use many other organizing skills. One of the most common tactics that PIRG activists use is research. As Kelly Griffin writes, research may mean compiling and comparing tenant laws, or it may mean interviewing people in the community or workplace to compile statistics on anything from consumer purchasing habits to job safety. PIRG researchers may go over voting records of legislatures or monitor campaign contributions, but research is just the first step. PIRGs also lobby the legislature, use the courts, act as a watchdog over government and corporations, and evaluate the public. For example, New Jersey PIRG NJPIRG conducts regular stream walks to monitor industrial compliance with federal and state laws regulating what and how much of a pollutant may be discharged into waterways. Writes Griffin, equipped with hip boots, maps of streams, data sheets, and a list of industries and their discharge permits, students would hike or canoe along stream beds and make systematic assessments of sources of pollution. NJPIRG students then release the results to encourage government agencies to enforce the laws. In one New Jersey county, streamwalkers stopped more than 20 plants from discharging waste without a permit. The Environmental Protection Agency gave NJPIRG a grant to produce a how-to manual for streamwalkers and awarded former NJPIRG Director Ed Lloyd its Special Award for Merit for Citizen Environmental Activism. In 1983, several state PIRGs created the U.S. Public Interest Research Group, with headquarters in Washington, D.C., to work at the national level on state PIRG issues, including support for voting reform, federal environmental legislation, including the Superfund to clean up hazardous waste and the Clean Air Act, utility rate reform, and opposition to nuclear power. U.S. PIRG also acts as a resource center and clearinghouse for state PIRG activities. PIRG found Action for a Change. The one underlying principle behind all PIRGs is that students are citizens, and that therefore their education should include experience in recognizing and solving society's shortfalls. Polystyrene foam ban in New Jersey. Students at West Milford High School in New Jersey were required to write a current events paper for a social studies class in which they were studying Thomas Paine and the American Revolution. Sophomore Tanja Vogt wrote an essay about the danger to the environment of polystyrene foam, known by the trade name styrofoam. Trays used by the school and cafeteria. The trays contain chlorofluorocarbons, which contribute to the depletion of the ozone layer. The trays take up landfill space and are made with styrene, a central nervous system depressant. Vogt noted that the Board of Education preferred to use polystyrene foam trays because they cost a nickel less than trays made of paper. Vogt, however, believed that students would be willing to pay the extra 5 cents to protect the environment. Social studies teacher Carl Steig challenged his class to respond to the problem the way that Payne might have, to initiate a boycott campaign to ban the cafeteria's polystyrene foam trays. Class members surveyed other students, asking whether they would be willing to pay extra for paper trays. Their results, 86% of students at the high school and 92% of students at Maropin Middle School said yes. Impressed, Edward Vogel, the business administrator for the Board of Education, Vogel had the class set up a test week in which students could buy lunch on foam trays for $1.20 and on paper for $1.25. A group of about 200 students spent the week convincing others of the importance of banning polystyrene foam. Some even loaned nickels to students without the extra change. By the end of the week, it was clear that the paper trays were preferred by most students. 72% of high school students and 86% of the middle school students had paid the extra nickel. The test week convinced the school board to institute an all-paper policy for township schools in February of 1989. A few months later, the school board, citing economic and environmental reasons, switched again from paper to reusable hard plastic, and from throwaway plastic utensils to silverware in 6 of the township's 8 schools. The West Milford students expanded their campaign to a statewide level, writing letters to over 700 New Jersey schools to request that they follow West Milford's lead and ban polystyrene foam. Their efforts attracted the attention of State Commissioner of the Environment, Christopher J. Daggett, who visited West Milford's high school in March of 1989, and promised students that the state would stop using immediately polystyrene foam products stockpiled in the department's cafeteria in Trenton. State Assembly member William J. Parcell, Jr., inspired by a meeting with Tanja Vogt and the other students, proposed legislation that would require New Jersey to recycle half of its trash by 1992. Parcell commented, "Young people will lead us to see the light on civil more, and they're going to do it again. Young people are going to lead us to a cleaner and safer America." The students formed an environmental club, which was an active participant in the successful nationwide boycott of McDonald's restaurants, protesting the fast food chain's use of polystyrene foam food containers. For more on the boycott, see page 256. The students staged protests at their local McDonald's. Student Kurtzai Schneid, dressed in a clown outfit as Ronald McToxic, alerting others to the dangers posed by polystyrene foam products. The West Milford High Environmental Club began work in 1991 to convince the New Jersey legislature to pass a bottle deposit bill to encourage recycling of bottles and cans. In April of 1989, Tanja Vogt was asked to speak at the United Nations at a day-long forum sponsored by the UN Environmental Project. Her message to the hundreds of students gathered in the conference: "Don't ever let anyone tell you that one person cannot make a difference." Study Group Report on Nursing Homes. In 1969, the U.S. Senate released a report, Developments in Aging, which outlined the dismaying plight of the elderly in the United States. Older people were likely to be living lives of what consumer advocate Ralph Nader termed poverty, sickness, loneliness, and powerlessness. Nader, believing that these conditions were focused most intensely in the nation's nursing homes, organized a task force to study nursing home conditions and the responsibility of the federal government to elderly residents. What made this task force distinctive was its membership. Nader suggested that a group of 6 high school seniors run the project, contributing their energy and enthusiasm to an effort. A broad-based study was necessary to trace the reasons for nursing home conditions and make suggestions for improvement. Over the summer of 1970, the students' task force worked in 3 nursing homes and visited over 20 others to gain first-hand knowledge of the situation. The team then divided their task into specific areas of responsibility, each member studying individually a different aspect of the problem. Claire Townsend and Patricia Pitts investigated government involvement in nursing homes. Catherine Morgan was responsible for analyzing legislation affecting the elderly. 3 of the students examined issues directly related to the day-to-day operations of the nursing homes. Lally Lloyd looked at the financial aspects. Janet Key studied personnel, healthcare, and overall environment, and Margaret Quinn made a detailed study of drugs used in nursing homes. Social and economic conditions of the elderly outside of the nursing home were studied by Elizabeth Baldwin. While the task force was advised by an instructor, a research assistant, and Ralph Nader, it was the 6 students who conducted the project. They spent months examining government reports and documents on aging. They interviewed more than 85 officials of the federal government, state agencies, the nursing home industry, and the medical profession. They also conducted interviews with staff and residents of the nursing homes that they visited. The students were horrified at the neglect and poor treatment of the elderly they witnessed in nursing homes. Patients tied down in beds or wheelchairs, sedatives freely prescribed, and emergency call button signals ignored. These findings were incorporated into a 346-page report, later published as a book, which recommended specific measures that the federal government, the nursing home industry, and the medical profession should take to improve the lives of nursing home residents. In December of 1970, the task force testified along with Nader before a Senate subcommittee on aging. Claire Townsend told the subcommittee that 80% of homes receiving public tax dollars did not meet federal standards of care. Nader urged the subcommittee to pressure President Richard Nixon's administration to force nursing homes to comply with minimum standards and called for a national retired people's liberation movement. In her preface to the book, Claire Townsend argues that the youth of the task force was an asset in producing a fair, critical report. We have no vested interest to serve, no reason to keep silent about what we see, no cause to dole out praise or blame, no excuses to make on behalf of anyone or anything. As she said before the Senate committee, age really has nothing to do with it. It's your dedication and devotion that counts. Utah pupils fight toxic waste. Teacher Barbara Lewis's goal was to create environmental awareness among her pupils at Jackson Elementary School in Salt Lake City, Utah. I had no idea I was unleashing a tiger, says Lewis, but when her 4th, 5th, and 6th grade pupils discovered a toxic waste site 3 blocks from their school, they went into action. The site contained a stockpile of over 50,000 barrels, including many that held dangerous chemicals. Some of the barrels were rusted and corroded and were leaking residue onto the ground. The students set out to determine if the leakage had contaminated the community's groundwater supply. Local health department officials told Lewis, "There's nothing children can do. They'll be in high school before they see any results." When the students themselves called the officials, Lewis said they were shooed away like pesky flies. The students refused to buy into the pessimism of the health department. They conducted a door-to-door survey of their neighborhood, informing residents about the dangers of hazardous waste and searching for wells from which health officials could take water samples. They devoured newspaper and magazine articles about hazardous waste and telephoned and wrote letters to health department officials. The national and regional offices of the Environmental Protection Agency and a local power company which owned the land where the hazardous waste was located. Their efforts attracted the attention of the media, and eventually Mayor Palmer DePaulis, a former schoolteacher, who promised to work towards completing a cleanup effort within 18 months. A few weeks later, workers started removing barrels from the site. In June of 1987, the day of the students' 6th grade graduation party, EPA researchers came to Utah to test the site. The students left the party to watch officials dig wells to test the water. 9 months later, student Helen Hilliard received the test results, which indicated that harmful chemicals, solvents, coal tars, pesticides, and heavy metals had polluted the soil and groundwater at the site. In the Salt Lake Valley, drinking water is collected and mixed. The dump, therefore, threatened the health of over 477,000 people. It was soon recommended for placement on EPA's National Priorities List. The students' concerns spread to other dumps around the state. They raised $2,700, which they wanted to donate to the state to help clean up any hazardous waste site. However, no legal mechanism existed through which Utah could accept the funds. Undaunted by the messy politics surrounding the issue, the students wrote a resolution proposing a Utah State Superfund and then lobbied for the bill in the state legislature. They called the offices of the legislatures. They spoke before the Senate. They passed out flyers decorated with crayon. One senator said, "No one has more effectively lobbied us than these young kids, and they didn't even have to buy us dinner." The bill passed unanimously. After these students went on to junior high school, Lewis's new pupils took up the cause of social change, applying the lessons learned by the older children to their own projects. When they discovered that a single tree in its average 50-year lifetime will contribute $62,000 worth of air pollution control, They worked to receive 2 city grants totaling $3,600 to plant 187 trees in their neighborhood. Campaign. The students helped persuade the U.S. Congress to make money for tree planting available to students throughout the America the Beautiful Act of 1990. Lewis insists that are the students. In fact, Jackson Elementary has the lowest per capita income in the city's school around them. Lewis says, one thing that they do have is courage. They don't give up easily. They believe that the future depends on them. They're not afraid to attack things that other people say can't be done. Barbara Lewis has written a practical guide for students called The Kid's Guide to Social Action: How to Solve the Social Problems You Choose and Turn Creative Thinking into Positive Action.